it's been very much like home. You know, we are, of course, my family is from Rio de Janeiro, and we feel that people here are very much like the people, like the Cariocas. You know, people are very warm, very close. It's very, you know, and we feel very much like at home here in Atlanta.
So can you tell us about the event today?
Well, the event today was focused on two pillars, one being the creative economy concept, which is a concept that is embraced by the federal government in Brazil. We have a secretariat under the Ministry of Culture that is advancing that concept of the creative economy. And the other is, of course, the São Paulo's candidacy for the World Expo in 2020. The concepts are not foreign to each other. I mean, the idea of hosting an expo will induce a lot of creative economy activities in itself. And so these both concepts are strongly supported by the federal government. The decision as to which country will host the world the fair in 2020 is going to be taken next year. We will know, and we hope that São Paulo of course, will win. And but the concept of the creative economy is a concept that we will be increasingly seeing and will be increasingly working on. And that, I think, in itself brings avenues of cooperation between Brazil and the United States, and between a city such as Atlanta and different cities in Brazil.
Right. So how can companies here in Atlanta take advantage of that opportunity and that priority by the federal government to really expand into Brazil, and not just Sao Paulo, but into Rio de Janeiro and elsewhere?
Well, I think the opportunities are there not just because we are hosting these games, but because in preparation for these as we call mega events, you have to do everything that goes from logistics to empowering social networks to assist these events. As you know, we have just hosted in Rio de Janeiro the Rio Plus 20 conference on sustainable development. It was an immense conference. We had over 50,000 people in Rio de Janeiro for a 2-week period, and it was a complete success. So the country, the cities are being prepared for these kinds of events, and we see that in the area where Atlanta excels, which of course is services, there's a lot of synergies that can come out of relationships with different Brazilian cities.
Okay. And how is your experience as a diplomat, how are you using that to build the relationship between Atlanta and Brazil?
Well, Atlanta is of course a priority, but my responsibility goes beyond that because I cover 5 states. So I go from Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee. So I have responsibility to promote relation between these 5 southern states, each in its own vocation and specificity, with Brazilian states. Now, cooperation at what we call the subnational level will increase in the coming years. When President Dilma was here earlier this year, she signed with President Obama a memorandum that exactly aims at fostering this kind of cooperation at the subnational level. So when I mean subnational level, for example, the MOU that was recently signed by Chairman John Eves of Fulton County and the Governor of Bahia. Now we can replicate that in many ways. Of course, São Paulo can replicate that with partnering with Atlanta. Rio de Janeiro has a sister city already concept with Atlanta. So there are many, many possibilities that I see of bringing business, bringing culture and academia, which is very important, university cooperation between the two countries, between these 5 states that I am responsible for.